Do you think Kyle Shanahan is coaching for his job this season? Year 8, they're 3-4. Is there an outcome, a world, something he could do, something he could fail to do that would leave the Yorks with no choice but to go try to get Ben Johnson?
They would be smart to do so, I feel like, at this point. He is coaching for his job. If he doesn't make the playoffs, I think even Jed York would have to fire him at that point. Like, that's the thing. Jed York likes Kyle Shanahan, the person, and he's been getting used to being mediocre and or relevant is probably the better word. He's accepted relevancy. Like, let's get to the playoffs and I'm good. I'm making money. We're fine. If he doesn't make the playoffs, even in Jed York, who has become accustomed to being relevant, now you're not relevant anymore. And you just dropped a whole lot of money on a bunch of players. You're spending a lot of cash. And if you can't make the playoffs after spending this much money, you have to move on. So Kyle Shanahan needs to make the playoffs at minimum. And for me personally, if you don't show me something against one of these really good teams in the playoffs, I'm still firing you. I'm still getting Ben Johnson, because Ben Johnson is going to be hired by another team somewhere this year, this coming off season. He probably should have done it last season, but he's for sure going to happen this season. And you might miss out on that opportunity to get an actual creative offensive play caller. So I think absolutely he's playing for his job.
I think he is too. I mean, I feel like when people say that this isn't realistic, it's because they always say, like, well, it would be such an unpopular move with the fan base and Kyle Shanahan would get scooped up so quickly. But if he misses the playoffs this year, I don't know how unpopular of a move it would be to move on from him. If they were to get Ben Johnson, I think Niner fans would be really excited. And again, guys, if you don't know who Ben Johnson is, he has a real generic name. He's been the general manager. The offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions for the last few years. He doesn't come from a particular coaching tree that's famous. He doesn't have a famous last name, but he's really creative. I'm not saying he's Andy Reid, but look what he's done with the Lions. Look at how many points they scored against the Vikings, and then compare that to how many points the Niners have scored against the Vikings the last 2 years. I mean, he's doing good stuff.
Here's the ultimate point, man. Like, Kyle Shanahan is 0-5 against Andy Reid, regardless of who his quarterback is. He cannot beat Andy Reid. And if you can't beat Andy Reid, you're not going to win a Super Bowl, most likely, unless you get lucky and they get knocked off and you play an inferior team. But when you get to the playoffs, you're playing the best of the best, these good defensive teams, and Kyle is not good against them. So if you can't beat the Andy Reids, if you're 0-5 against those guys, then what's the point? Are we just accepting we might get second place this year? Is that what we're willing to accept as a fan base? If you fire Kyle Shanahan, he will get hired somewhere else. Who gives a damn? I don't. And you know what? We might hire Ben Johnson, and he might be the next Jim Tom Sula. Guess what? Then you fire his ass too, and you keep looking for the guy that can win the ring for you.
That's a great point. Like, you can't beat Andy Reid, then you can't be the coach of the 49ers, because that's the only team they haven't taken down. It's simple as that. And what's crazy is, like, go back to 2016 when Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, had that great offense. They faced the Chiefs. The Chiefs quarterback was Alex Smith, and the Chiefs won. Yeah. They freaking won. So, yeah, it's like, if you to use like a basketball analogy, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes are the Bulls. They're Michael Jordan, they're Phil Jackson. And if you're going to win a championship, you're probably going to have to knock them off. Yeah. And if your coach has proven over almost 10 years that he can't beat that particular opponent, then you're wasting your time with that guy. You gotta try to find someone else. You have
to, or you gotta hope Patrick Mahomes goes plays baseball for a year.
Right.
Right.
His dad was a baseball player. Patrick Mahomes the first.
Talk him into it. Maybe he can play minor leagues for the White Sox like Jordan did for a season. Like, I mean, that's the reality. And it's not just the Chiefs, though. It's the Ravens. It's Flores, right? Kyle can't beat these teams. His offense is figured out by these particular defensive coordinators. And I'm going to ask the fan base. A lot of the people in the fan base, I'm conducting a poll. I think like 60% don't believe he can get a Lombardi anymore. But if you're one of these 40% that thinks he can, my question is why? He's 0-5 against Andy Reid. He's 0-2 against Flores as a defensive coordinator. What makes you think that he can win a Super Bowl? I'm genuinely curious. I think he's shown us who he is at this point, and he just doesn't have the ability to do it.